Well, welcome everyone to this week's edition of System Override. We have a great episode for you today, but first I'm going to stop and celebrate. This is our 25th episode. That is amazing, Bri.
That is, and I didn't think we'd done that many.
I know it's been over half a year that we've been doing these.
That's crazy. Man, you know
Yeah,
what? That just goes to show when you make a habit around something and you show up consistently, it's like, oh man, I didn't even realize we did
exactly.
that many.
And you know what's so cool, and our listeners will be so happy to hear, but like I have been getting lots of guests reaching out, and I think our September and our October are almost full of people that are joining us on the podcast.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a huge podcast listener, to be honest, where I've seen a ton of different formats, but I guess in default, you're like, oh yeah, I guess they do kind of fall more interview style rather than free, because that was the feedback you're getting, right? It was like
They
people like
do, yeah.
free flow conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. When I ask people why they want to join ours, first of all, it starts 100% by the excitement, the energy, the candid conversations is the number one reason people want to join us as guests. And then the second is they like the format and the long form. They feel
Mm,
like it gives more opportunity to really talk through issues, but also talk through just like really get to kind of weave in what
mm-hmm.
they're working on, things that they're seeing in their own industry alongside what we're talking about for the day. And better than an interview, which is sort of really canned. And
Yeah.
you kind of have to answer the questions of the podcaster, right?
Yeah. No, for sure.
Yeah.
They
So
weren't attracted to the fact that I'm always drinking something on our podcast. Cups.
that didn't come into the top couple, but I will check the next time I'm, meeting with a potential guest.
Always think about that as I'm looking at the video. I'm like, do I just look like someone who's just drinking from different cups on my desk the entire time?
Well, that's good, right? Like this way they know that you're not just about being all the same every day. This time it's like a different drink.
This is
Doesn't
my
matter.
smoothie, I didn't
Yeah,
have time to do that beforehand. So
yeah. I know you got a cup of coffee sitting somewhere on your desk, so
3 cups at all time. I got this
yeah,
one, got that one. I got my water cup
you got a lot of
with
cups.
the chopstick in it because I put my electrolytes in and then I stir them around and then I just keep it in there.
Nobody wants to see my family of water bottles that I have 4 water bottles sitting on my desk. Yeah. So we all have our things. Okay, let's move. Let's review from our last episode. The big action was about motivating yourself to do a difficult task. We shared some of the things we already do. Did you think of anything else or practice anything in the between episodes about doing the hard things?
I think, like, for me, doing the hard things was just, like, keeping the one foot in front of the other, and I think
Yeah.
we chatted a bit about that this morning even when we were chatting through some wins that we had as a team. It's like, it's really about planting the seeds and just continuing to plant them and just keep moving towards it, and so I think that's the practice I've just been maintaining through things that they felt like going through the quicksand or the mud a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great one. One thing I thought about is that sometimes if you really need to get the hard things done,
Yeah.
writing them down and being very deliberate on who owns what and what the expectation is, that clarity drives outcomes faster. And it's not a practice that I like to use very often, but when there's a particular situation which we just recently had because many of us are async or completely out of the office for the next, at a period of time over the next 4 weeks, there's actually a time like for the next 4 weeks, none of the founders are all 4 in the country or in Calgary at the same time. So, we put together a plan of being very deliberate and very specific about sort of the things and expectations and who owns what. And I've already seen like a change in how we're getting through some of those things that can get lost in the day to day, even though they're super important. I also have seen like how much I think about it, even on my own stuff. I'm always like, oh yeah, I got to go do this because it's in the plan. And it's just interesting that sometimes writing them down and being very specific gets you through those hard things and gets the outcomes you want. It's a tactic I hadn't tried for a while, and it's certainly working for us. Okay, we got some great stories today, and and I'd say like one of the things that as was reoccurring in all of our topics today is that we're in that era where nobody really wrote the rule book, And so we're really talking about how people are really improvising and how they're solutioning. So not everything has an answer yet, but
Mhm.
given the influx of AI, given some of the other pressures across the globe today, everybody's trying to figure out what the roadblock is. And I think the first story starts off with BCG did a survey and found out that 72% of employees save a full workday a week using AI. So, but which is pretty remarkable. I don't know that we've stumbled onto too many companies that would say that they've done a whole workday a week. But anyways, but 66% of them are getting no guidance and they're wanting to find out what to do with this extra time. So, we can talk about whether someone needs guidance or why they need guidance, but interesting statistics, didn't you think?
Yeah, super interesting. And I think like we know that that's the case, but then how do you recapture that opportunity? And I think into growth, right? It's all
Yeah.
about like this is your growth opportunity and this is your way to maximize your business through efficiency, but not even through efficiency. I think it's like everyone's been on this optimize, like fix what we have to the best that we can. This is the now new like exploratory, open new doors, new opportunity kind of space, but I think because everyone's been in that, like, optimized zone for so long these last 5, 10 years, it's just been like, "Optimize, optimize, just get that overhead down, make sure we're shrinking." That it's such a different mindset to go into a growth mindset of, like, now how can you unlock parts of the business? And so I see that as, like, a falling down at the executive level if that's the case, because you should be setting the strategy and setting the tone for that, but it's not surprising because what I've heard from, past colleagues or friends or things who are still in more the large corporate enterprise space is like AI still feels very like just a executive sprinkle on top. Be like, say we're
Mhm.
using AI, put the AI in. Use the word AI in the press releases and like making
Yeah.
sure that it's just like there, but there's the next I mean, it's a very positive move that they're freeing this up. So like now what's the next step of maturity to be like, okay, we have this. What can we do with this capacity? Uh, and I was just literally talking to someone the other day who's like, I wish people would identify when they have capacity because I have capital
Right.
spent on projects, but I need business testers out of the business. And they all say they're full. And it's like there's a fear of people admitting they have capacity because they think that that's a negative thing. Because in the past, it's been punitive, right? What
Yeah.
do you
Well, I
think
think
about
that's one of the yeah, I think that's one of the things that we're seeing erupt here is again, goes back to that gap of trust between the employee and the employer is the employee's like, I'm not going to tell anybody I have all this capacity because one, they're going to give me more work
Yeah,
and then I'm going to be over capacity again. Or two, they're going to let me go because they don't need me anymore. And of which neither of them are hopefully true. Like I can't speak for all companies, but if leaders were really thinking about that, they do what you just said. They talk about like deploying the human brain into doing things that it can do that maybe we've like stifled it over
yeah.
the last 10 years of just doing tasks and measuring everybody on every second of their day instead of giving them the license to open their brains and really think about where we're going and become very much more about moving the business forward, getting personal growth out of this so that we actually use our human capital in a way that humans can be used and machines can't be. And that's a pretty cool thing, but I am not hearing that in most of the rhetoric yet.
No, and I think the really interesting thing to the conversation I had the other day, which I think is good for everyone who's listening to think about, is if you are someone in the business with capacity, like this individual is from the IT space. And so they're like, we have millions of dollars to spend on projects that will help move the business forward, that will help in these things, but I can't spend that unless I have people within the business who can collaborate in testing and validating, their data projects, they're this, they're that, but I need the subject matter expertise. So I think I would challenge anyone who's an individual contributor right now. It's like thinking like, what do I do with that time? It might not have to be in your own personal silo. Think broader in the company to initiatives that are going on or different departments that might have initiatives that could be, where the resources would be valuable. Because what I heard is what these companies do is because everyone is resource constrained according to them, just not wanting to self-declare, they go out and hire consultants, and then
Right.
they hire externals, contractors to come in and do work when they have the capacity internal. So that's such a win for you to show your value to the organization. If you need that to feel comfortable, that could be your use case. I'm going to save you money from external resources by trying to redeploy, any extra capital that I have in time or ability back into the company. There's not a
Mhm.
single leader in your company who's going to look at you and say, we should get rid of this person. They're going to be like, yes, this person gets it.
Yeah.
We value that, like, great job. So I think, how do you change that narrative of just being like, I just don't have something to do? It's not about having something to do, it's about creating value. And so, like,
Mhm.
how can you change your mindset into like, how can you create value and communicate that process with your leaders so they understand why you're thinking that and what you're doing it? Because I think that's where people fall down too, is they don't align with what value they're going to try to create. They don't talk to anyone about it, and then they just go do something that may or may not be relevant, and then they're kind of like, "Oh,
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're onto something there. Like I think we keep talking about a skills-based future of work, but maybe it's really a value-based. And
mm,
that the more you can show your human side adds value and the things that only humans can do,
yeah,
is really how you differentiate yourself and putting your hand up to go and work on, different projects and knowing that you can do both
yeah,
is a really cool thing. Now, I challenge leaders
mhm,
to, be opening their minds
yeah,
to how this could really work and, reverse engineering that conversation you just had about how I could bring that to an organization and save money. A leader
yeah,
could say, you know what? These opportunities to learn are going to disappear and we're going to have to pay consultants to do them. People inside the organization don't volunteer. And we think we have such an amazing workforce. We
mhm,
want to see you guys grow personally by taking on one of these kind of additional,
yeah.
roles or learning developments.
I love
And
that, 'cause what a way to cross train. That's what everyone's trying to
yeah,
get. This is gonna improve the ability of your teams if they get exposure to other areas, exposure to other things, like, this is gonna make them better for your organization, and they're gonna value that more because it gets you out of the same every day. It feels like a special assignment. It
it
feels like
does.
something that's exciting and novel to re-energize some of your attention, And so I feel like there's a lot of wins, but again, it is all to the framing and the mindset and the objectives you put towards it. And so I think and I mean, we chatted a lot about how League can support that. I was like, yeah, like League can absolutely support getting people to move in a better space in that. Be reaching out, like doing that from the individual perspective. We can enable these kinds of things. So yeah, I think it's just, how do you do that for yourself? How do you get yourself into a mindset of thinking a different way? Because I find, yeah, like even these is like, what do we do? I'm gonna get fired.
Yeah.
It's like, it always goes into this like such a
Yeah, this
negative, anxiety
spiral as
bubble,
opposed to
It's like,
what if
yeah,
it gets you promoted? What if it
yeah,
gets you actually retained
yeah,
because you were able to show value? Like, and and you're right. Like when we built the knowledge boosts inside of the League app, a lot of it is about building, first of all, identifying your value, being able to synthesize it, really living your own value. Because many of us have we go to work, we do what we love,
hmm,
we do some stuff we don't always love, and and then we go home. And instead, like, how much time do people spend every day thinking about their contribution, their impact that they're having? And what they want that impact to look like in the future.
yeah.
And this is where these kind of great opportunities come in to play, is reaching out to other leaders and saying, "Hey, I got some time on my hands. How can I help?" Or here's something I'd like to do. Would that be valuable to you?
Isn't it so wild that a lot of what changes, like, there's not actually that much that changes between those 2 pictures, if you picture those as, like, a picture frame,
Right.
apart
Yeah.
from intentionality, actual real framing, setting some real guidance or, like, thought around it. Like, there's not actually mechanically that much different between these 2 pictures, except putting in these different ingredients attached to it. And it's like going on a walk and just, like, rushing, and you're like, I wanna get to the grocery store and I'm just in a rush. I'm just gonna run and go fast versus like taking a walk and actually noticing what's around you and actually making a plan about the grocery store and, you know what you're avoiding that because you know there's traffic there, so you're paying attention and thinking a little ahead, so you took the other side road, you met a friend, and then you set a date for, this day versus you did the other one, you're rushing, you ran into that, you're pissed off, you run into the construction, you're stuck, it's just like it's wild that there's not actually that much that changes about those pictures when you really break it down to brass tacks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it's pretty exciting. I think we're just going to have to continue to reiterate for people that this is your opportunity to think outside of the traditional box. And if you're met with resistance, you're met with resistance. Like we can't control what other people do, but
Mhm.
we can absolutely keep controlling and thinking about what we can do and we can change and what we
Mm.
offer to the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's switch to another, let's call it playing by a new rule book. There's lots of statistics about the escalation of female founders, and the number of women who are moving into entrepreneurship has gone up like something like 10, 15x over the last decade. But what's been interesting, and we may have experienced this ourselves, is that actually getting funding for female organizations has been very, very difficult as a percentage of money that go to male founded organizations. But there was a article this week coming out about how there was an increase, significant increase
Mhm.
in female dollars that went to female founders, particularly in the tech space
Mhm.
over the last year, up to $45 billion, which
Mhm.
is significant.
Yeah.
However, the percentages of deals being funded went down.
Yeah.
And when you actually peeled back the data, it was that most of this money went to five big organizations.
Mhm.
And like, we're talking like Anthropic and
Yeah.
Scale AI and Thinking Machines Lab. And we are so proud that there are amazing females leading these organizations. But it did, if you look at just the quick, clickbait type of headline, it looks like things have changed significantly. And what we found is that's not really the case. So I'm going to flip it over to you as the CEO of a startup tech company. Let's talk about the real pain of being a female founder looking for fundraising.
How long do you wanna talk for?
We only have 10 minutes, so you're going to have to go.
I mean, I think, yes, on one hand, it's positive that these things are happening, period, you know what I mean?
Right.
And that are having those kind of things move through and this kind of stuff happen. So, like, I think all you don't wanna, like, shoot, down the positive that's happening in that, like, those are positive proof points that are happening right now. And so I do think it's interesting though, it's like from like female founded, like you think of Anthropic, that's not like a purely female founded play. Like it's more like we have a woman on the team, you know what I mean? Who's
No,
part
she's the co-founder.
She's a co-founder, yeah, she's a co-founder,
Yeah.
but it's like it's not the same narrative as, like, a purely solo female
Right.
founder or because, like, she's got her brother and, like, they very much, like, how they're shown in the news and things like that is its own thing, and
We
so, like
often see her brother and not her, let's be
that's what I
very
mean. It's
honest.
like she is often the one who's, like, out there, and so, like, I
Yeah.
love and I think, like, putting that in the, like, sole female founder spot, she herself is a female founder, but the company isn't one that I would identify in the sense of, like, this is a female founded solely kinda company. So I think there's, like, some distinctions to be made of, like, what other companies are in here that are being just, like, just that a woman was on the part of the founding team versus, like because I will say, like, we are a fully female founding team in ours, and it's interesting. I've had enough conversations now to understand and to know it's like and I mean, this is proof. It's not like just me saying this. Like they have stats on this. They have all the things. It's harder to get money. It's harder to convince people. It almost is like it doesn't you have to work harder. It's not that you can't get the money. You can get it, but like you got to be grinding in comparison to some of your peers and so like there's times where I'm just sitting with lovely people who I like immensely men who are younger, who don't have the experience, who don't have a hot hell of a clue what they're doing, but they're good at, the sell or the jazz hands, and they're just raking in the cash. And it's just like, wow, Okay, because women are asked different things. Women are like, it's not about the vision, it's not about this. People are always going into like, how are you going to make this work? How are you going to do this, little lady? Because I don't have confidence just inherently. Like, it doesn't matter what your resume says, it doesn't matter what your background is. Like, unless you're like a big stinking deal that I already know about in like fame in some way, you got no cred, essentially, is what it feels like in going into these conversations. And people undervalue immediately out of the gate, like what they think you, it's not that they don't like you, and it's not that they don't think that you have a lot of grit, like this or that, but a lot of investors like fall into that, like, well, how are you going to do this, little lady? It feels like, honestly, sometimes taking your car for like an oil change and then having people just be like, well, do you know what a car is? Like, and you're just like, yeah, I can do, bro. I'm good. And so, yeah. Now, on the other side, there are investors who are incredible and who are supportive and who never once have made me feel like that and who have been like, yeah, you can do it. Here, go. And so I think it's like, it just depends. But by and large, I would say, unfortunately for women, that is the case. And like, we're women building a SaaS company. And so I think that's another thing is like, I've noticed in funding for females, is it's like people are more comfortable when it's like, well, you're doing a woman thing, you're doing a period,
Yeah.
you're doing a birth.
Women's health.
Yeah, women's health. Like, that's, you're right. I don't know. You know about that. That, I guess you are a subject matter expert in that because you're a woman.
Just by default of being a woman.
That's allowed. You know what I mean? But it's harder when you're doing things that's just like, hmm, you're not who I was expecting to see here. Okay. How do I compute this? And so it's just
Yeah.
like, it's such a trip. And it's one of those things where it's like, it's easy to get frustrated on it, but it's better just to line on, hello, child. Okay, thank you. She's writing me a note. I'm like, why are you hiding with my coffee?
She really needs to tell you something
Yeah,
right now.
I've trained her to write me a note when I'm like, "I'm on a call, just write it on a piece of paper."
This is
But
the beauty of being a female founder and a mom. You
yeah,
gotta do them both at the same time.
you wear many hats, and
Yes.
that is another interesting thing too, is like, it's like the female founders do present themselves differently, and I think in that, it just doesn't align with the archetype of what we think is, the way always. And I was struck at when we were at, it was a summit that we were at, like it might have been the 51 one. I can't remember which, we were at an event and they had really incredible speakers. All the women were there, but I noticed something for most of the women speakers. They had their notes with them. They had, things that they were referencing as they were, even if they were doing a keynote, like they were doing that. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I was reflecting on it after because I'm not, usually at an event where it's like all female speakers. And so I noticed the trend and I was like, what's so interesting is like, this is the exact kind of thing that apparently sends signals that, they don't know that, you don't know your stuff and this and that. And that's where it's like, no, 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 no. As a woman, like right now, I'm having a conversation while writing a note about things with my kid. I went downstairs for a coffee and my husband, like, why is the furnace making this weird noise and blah, blah, blah. It's like, you just, as a mom or a lot of the time, because we do take on, more in that, what do they call it? The invisible load or like the family management or things like that. It's just like, you don't know how many data points are in my head at all times.
And when
And if you think that I can shuffle, like, because it's like, what's the stat? Because they're all like, well, you don't know this right away or this. And it's just like, I know all these things, but I don't think you understand. I have to shuffle through like the meetings I had this morning, the dentist appointment I needed to make. Where was that sock? Because I have to find it for soccer later. There's just so many things I have to move out of the way to find that number for you, that it's just easier to have it on a notepad so I can have it this or that. And I think it was just reflecting on that. And I was like, that's so interesting
interesting
because I think
reflection.
that is another thing. And I don't know that people are aware enough of like understanding what's behind that or
Mhm.
how that's still valid and is a valid way to show up. And they just go for a very face value kind of thing around, that's just not what feels right. Like, that doesn't feel like that confident, jazzy. It's like, yeah,
Right.
bro lives with his mom and she still cooks for him and does it. Or it's like, yeah, it's got a stay-at-home wife who manages his whole life and his children and everything's scheduled. She puts out his underwear for him. He has to think about literally nothing but this job. That's all he does. It's like, what a luxury, you know what I mean? And so I think that's just like a really interesting thing. But I think that's why you see once you get into these companies, like female founders get better results for their companies. Female founders,
Yeah.
because female founders are an operator at heart. We're already operators. We're already good at leading teams and managing things and multitasking and dealing with complex problems and issues all the time. And so I think that's the thing that makes us so good is also the thing we're penalized by in a weird way in the early state. You know what I mean? It's like you're penalized in the early days, but then once you make it, you're glorified for it. And I find that fascinating.
Yeah, it's really interesting, that last part. I remember we were in a session and we were talking to investors, and like one of the major investors turned to us and said, I would totally invest in women before men because they get stuff done, they manage the money better, and they get stuff done really, really quickly and effectively.
Mhm.
But yet, then when she turned around and talked to us 10 minutes later about who she like the kind of companies and how they invest, they
Mhm.
weren't in companies that traditionally women would be running. And it was just interesting. I'm like, okay, even though you know you're probably going to get a better or I don't want to say better because there's lots of men
Yeah.
that have done amazing things in
Yes.
running companies, but it was just
No,
interesting
it's a
that she,
strong bet. Yeah.
yeah, like she was like, this is what I've observed, but this is where I'm going to invest because traditionally that's where, you know, I've got data that says that's actually going to be stronger, but there's been more years of data points on that. So of course it looks stronger,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
It's just interesting.
It's so interesting. Well, and even just the assumptions. Remember, we were standing in line for that one event and talking to a lovely gentleman, but then
Yeah.
he had to catch himself. He had to catch himself
Yeah.
because he just assumed that our CEO was a man and we were just like the little ladies out for the event. And it's just like, no, you're
Yeah.
talking to the sweet, sweet right here, the two of
Yeah.
us.
But it was, yeah, it's interesting. But I think the good news is in this situation, 5 years from now, I think this data will look better. Meaning that you might still have the 49 billion, or maybe it's 60 billion by then, but the percentage of deals will go back up. And I think that's because there is this influx of
Yeah.
women founders. There are way more women going into entrepreneurial type of roles. And so what we found, like if we look even back 10, 15 years in corporate life, the more women that got into corporate life, the rules changed, the opportunities evolved, and things became more equal. But I did love this story in the fact that, if you just looked at the heading, it looked like things were all rosy and everything's going up. But that is not the reality that we have experienced for sure.
And I think it's like, all good things are good, but at the same time, I don't want us to be like, we're just willing to accept scraps. Like, yeah, there's something good. Good. Like,
Right. Yeah,
that's good.
no.
It's good enough. It's like, it's not good enough. It's good,
Right.
but it's not good enough. So,
Because we deserve the same quality of
yeah,
capital as
yeah,
any other entrepreneur. Right?
exactly.
We're doing amazing work. We're filling a void in the career space and workplace space that has been needed to be filled for probably over a decade. And it's going to make a difference and an impact. So there's no reason why what we're doing is any less valuable than somebody else in the SaaS space.
Yeah, totally. No, for
Right.
sure. And like I said, there are incredible investors. And I think that's the biggest thing as a female
Yeah.
founder is you just need to
You
find
just have to
your
find them.
you find your
Yeah.
people because not everyone's going to be your people. But then again, that just speaks to the more work and more effort to find the
Right.
right ones.
Yeah. And I'll just take a moment here to say, like, I am so impressed by the job that you've been doing in finding all these people because who knew? Maybe think about a year ago, there was like one or two investors we were talking to, and and there were people that you knew, and, they kind of were floating along with us
Mhm.
versus now. I don't even know how many are on your Rolodex.
Yeah.
There's a dating term, but
Yeah.
like a dated term in your contact list, right? Like now it's got to be massive. Like there's not probably not an investor who doesn't know who Bri Falls is now.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Also, I was never a dating I was not of the generation of the dating
Of the
app.
dating apps.
That was not a thing. I didn't do lots of dating. I was just more like, "You're my friend, and now you're my person, and so perfect."
Yeah.
The kind of person. And so, I'm getting, so many messages right now trying to stay on the topic.
It's gonna be one of those days.
I know.
right? Yeah.
But I think
Every
that's the thing, it's just, like, I've realized, like, "Oh my god, thank god I don't have to I've never had to date someone, thank god I'm married."
yeah,
I'm like, if for some reason I lose my husband, I'm like, I'm never finding another, I'm just gonna, like, I'm not bothering, I don't
doing
wanna
this.
be connected with it. This is terrible. I don't know why.
Okay, so this is transition to fundraising to we feel really bad for all the single people out
Yeah,
there.
I have a lot of empathy, this is not fun, it's not a fun thing.
Okay, how about we run over to the next story? So this is great. Intuit has done its AI impact report for 2026 and said 77% of small businesses have now started to use AI on a daily basis. Now, what they don't seem to have, which is traditional in all businesses I found, is they don't have any policies about it. They don't
Yeah,
really have any structure around when you should and shouldn't use it, which probably, requires some attention depending on the sensitivity of the business you run. But I thought this was interesting to, start to highlight. First of all, great news that a year ago this would not been the data, right? Small businesses wouldn't be using it. It doesn't really go into what kind of things. Like, are they using it like we are, where we're using it day to day to like build everything for us, and it's just it's like another employee in our business. I suspect many of them are using it as more of a knowledge tool. It helps organize their days, get lots of email and calendar stuff and those kind of optimizations. But it doesn't matter. It's good to be embracing the technology, which I
yeah,
I think is awesome.
yeah. No, I think that's the thing, it's like again, it's like the tone, of like scare tactic, like they're using it, but they don't know the rails and like whatever. And it's yes, you're right. There absolutely are risk things attached to it. And I don't think we want to minimize the fact that like you want to like not be putting super, your top secret client list into just an open chat GPT and like doing stuff like that. Like I get so like I think it's
That's
more just
right.
like setting some basics of like etiquette for your teams of like what they can and can't do, but on the other hand, like I think that is the hard thing with like innovation is we kind of have a sense of like crushing it with the risk side. And so like how do you balance that in a way where you can bring it in, you can adopt it quickly, depending on what you're doing, the risk can be lower or can be higher, it depends on your business. And like so how do you bring that judgment in of just being able to show that? And like I think if you're going to bring it in as an executive or a leader of your company, like you should just be giving that kind of like again it goes back to the leadership of it. It's like don't just like slap it in and say use it, like understand your business and what the risk impacts could be at a high level, communicate that to your team, and then set some checks so that you understand how it's being used. But I don't think everyone needs to go super narky on it. It's more just like setting a good, because then you don't get anyone, you know what I mean? If everyone's so worried to use it or worried to do that, they're not going to. So how do you, create some of that opportunity without being too freaked out about? Because I think that's the thing is like everyone also, I mean, granted, this is just me, but maybe I have a different, level of risk tolerance. And it's not like we're doing any of this, but like, say you had a scenario where somebody did put something into ChatGPT, like, I don't think anyone understands like what the end output of that could be of another user stumbling on. You know what I mean? Like, does anyone
Hmm.
actually stumble on it? Do they have to put in the exact prompt? Like, I have no idea. Like, so say someone did put something in, how could someone discover it? Like, you know what I mean? Just by accident out around the world? Like, I have no idea. You know what I mean? And so I think from that, it's just, I don't know if we even understand. It's not like it's like serving it out like a newsletter to everyone and be
Right.
like,
Yeah.
Shannon,
No,
put
like
this into the GPT. Did you
it
know
went
that?
out to all the ChatGPT users around the
Exactly.
world. No, it does not work like that.
Exactly, and so, like, I do hear a lot, it's like, could the learn off
Yeah.
of it, could it this? It's like, yeah, technically, but, like, I don't know what that looks like in an output that anyone could do something meaningfully or risky with it, like, I just don't know, and so it's an interesting other side of it where it's like, I get the risk, but I also get I don't it's not like it goes to your competitor, it's just like, "Hey, Tom, I have something to tell you. I just got this download,
Yeah,
and
like I think we've
I'm
seen
different."
some examples of recent where potentially IP was not well protected and may have been used to duplicate or reduce
Yeah,
the moat around a business.
yeah,
And I think those are tricky. And I think that's the debate right now about open source versus using one of the big frontier models.
yeah,
but you don't know what you don't know. And you need to build the appropriate risk
Mhm.
guardrails
Yeah.
as you learn.
Yeah.
Because one of the things I remember, and this will really date me, but I remember like back when when we were getting like internet into businesses as a bigger scale technology. And like we shut down everything. Like it was like we couldn't actually go, and it was basically useless, right? And it was because everybody was, instead of letting anybody make a mistake and
Yeah.
then figuring out what the best policies were, the policies were so rigid that really nobody used the tool anyways, because they're
Yeah.
like, well, this just doesn't work.
Yeah.
So, there's always that happy balance. And I think in my opening statement, I mentioned that you have to set the guardrails
Yeah.
based on the importance of your business or the
Yeah.
type of business you're in, right? Like if you're handling people's very, very confidential information, if you're
Mhm.
handling top secret, PII and that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
or intellectual property,
Yeah.
well, then
You gotta
maybe
be
you
very
should
careful.
use an open source model and make sure you're not letting anybody else train off of your model, right? For your information. But you pick that for yourself. You set policies because of the type of business that you have
Totally.
versus setting them in the hopes that nobody ever
Yeah.
uses the wrong thing at the wrong time, because new things are always going to create opportunity for somebody making a mistake.
Well, and it'd be interesting to see, like, in that case for Anthropic, like, what
Mhm.
happens with it. Because, like, not that I'm justifying any of this, I'm just getting into my weird, spot over here of just, like, devil's advocate, but it's like, okay, so say it does wind up that way. Say, like, through that, wasn't careful enough, say it was. Well, so what happened? Like, what's gonna be the result of that? It's like, okay, so Anthropic built a billion-dollar business. They have all of these users, and now this happened, and they're gonna deal with it. They have the resources to probably rebuild whatever they need to in order to make sure that it's okay, and then they're just gonna keep moving. You know what I mean? Like that, like, I'm just curious to see what will be the outcomes. Like, they have to pay a fine, they have to do whatever,
Yeah, they'll
and
end up paying a
yeah, they'll pay, they'll
but they'll
whatever.
yet afford it, and
Yeah, exactly. So it's just kinda like, yeah, I mean, it happened, but, like, look at everything else that happened along with it and what we have as a
exactly.
result of that, and they're probably gonna be fine. So it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, shit happens, you know what I mean? And I think that's the thing as these kind of business, senses where it's just like, what if something happens? It's like, if you run a business, things are going to happen. I'm just gonna tell you right now.
Well,
You
and
can't
let's
control all the stuff that's gonna happen around you.
exactly. And
Yeah.
competitive landscape is one of those things,
Yeah, you can't.
right? Competitive. If you can prove that that your intellectual property,
Yeah,
which is if your intellectual property was protected, which I'm going to assume this was, and it was actually deliberately stolen and used to create a new business,
yeah.
then you have a case.
Then you have
There's
a case.
already law
Yeah,
in place for that.
yeah,
However, the competitive landscape changed. Like look at ChatGPT, for example. OpenAI was the first big frontier model. Everybody used it. All of us, that's the one we tested on. We started with it. All these other ones came, and now OpenAI started to lose its market share this year, right? So they had to figure out, okay, we need to reorganize and figure out which way to go forward. And
yeah.
then they slowly have started to regain market share or balance it out. But their competitive landscape completely changed from when they were sort of the only one on the
Mhm.
street to now you've got some pretty significant competition with deep, deep pockets.
Yeah, exactly. With deep, deep pockets. And I think to your point, it's like just look at how much, like we're on Claude, look how much that has evolved. It's like co-work,
Yeah,
design. There's all these different facets. Like within a year, who knows where we're gonna be as far as like what's the
exactly.
and so like I find the whole moat conversation and IP protection very fascinating right now in this time that we're in. Because to be honest, I think the biggest thing that is any company's biggest defense is just being really obsessive, like the Amazon model. Like are you obsessive about the problems of your customers and being in front of
Yeah,
them to build ahead of them? That's your biggest win point right there
that
because
is your biggest,
you
always.
can have all the sexiest secret sauce of IP, this and that. If no one wants to buy it and if it's not useful, it doesn't freaking matter. And so, like, the only
Exactly.
thing that matters is that someone finds what you're doing valuable and that they're all going to buy and pay for it. So that's really your secret sauce. And with things being able to be built these days, I'm just so curious, like how that's traditionally how we've like held things together in the, you think of like a SaaS, like not SaaS maybe, but like in some of the tech play Now,
Mhm.
this doesn't obviously translate to everything like hard tech, and there's other things that like this conversation wouldn't be relevant for, obviously. But I'm just so interested to see how that evolves over time. And to see if in certain segments of tech that becomes less valuable because the ability to build and to build fast and to build almost at this like equilibrium, like what becomes the other facets of moat of protection.
I think
Yeah.
it's gonna be an interesting conversation because, you know, it started, several years ago as the models were starting to be trained. There was always like, thinking about did you steal, you know, creative properties from like authors or musicians or, because you trained off of their models. So interesting conversation, when you're actually even taking off the stuff that's in the public domain, what is considered, ownership. And so I think this debate will continue for
Well, did
many
you 'cause
decades.
I think I saw an article around, like, just the whole universal, like, benefit for everyone because 'cause they're like, "All these
Mhm.
models are trained off the internet. That's all every single person's on the planet."
Exactly.
And so how does that work? Because that was all, like, based off of other people's things, and that's how you train.
Exactly.
And so what does that mean anymore? Like, you know what I mean? And how do we manage that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be, so many things are gonna be changed because of AI and this ecosystem that we're now entering into. It'll be interesting to find out. But stay tuned, people. We'll be here. Someday it'll be episode 225, and you'll like, we'll got
Thank
it all solved by then.
Yeah, we got it.
Okay, let's transition to this week's big action. So, as we've kind of talked about uh, how AI saves you time and that sort of thing, and the thing we're asking this week is, what do you do with your time with your time when AI saves it for you? What do you do with your time when AI saves it for you?
You know what?
Put more stuff into AI.
Yeah, it's not I'm not in a good phase of life right now to be asking that question 'cause I feel like I'm not really feeling the free time thing, but with that, though, I think the biggest thing for me, like, as in the role that I'm in and, needing to be front facing and, like, doing some of, like, that kind of work and also just, like, problem solving a lot, like, it's a pretty, like I need to be in a good mindset to think of
Mm,
strategy like, the more I fall into, like, a tactical doing, like, that's not good for us, that's not my role here, and then it doesn't help everyone if I'm falling into that, and so there's things I obviously need to tactically do and
no,
get
no,
done
no. That's
job,
right.
but, like, if I'm in my mind as a leader, just being, like, a tactical get done leader, I need to make sure that I am, doing that and being front facing, I have to think of, like, posts or content or things like that, and it's just, like, if I don't have enough brain space and I'm too burdened down, I have a hard time it's harder to get in that creative mindset, or for problem solving or like, I'm trying to go through different like, structures and how things should be set up for certain things in the business or whichever. And it's like you need to be a little creative and think outside the box. And so what I've been doing, which I had to get comfortable with finally and give myself permission with, is I've been trying to keep and protect some of my time in the morning and have it be like and I found summer has really enabled this. So like our new workflow has really enabled this for me is I just need a little bit of bumbling rumination time. And I'm thinking about work things, but I'm not sitting at my computer. I'm kind of like
Yeah.
doing the other things and I just need to be like not at my desk in order to have this space. And so I've realized I'm like, "Oh my goodness, I always have these ideas when I'm getting ready or having a coffee and kind of just like, getting stuff together, and just having a slower start without meetings and stuff like right away or getting on Slack and like doing emails or this like right away. I need that ruminating time in the morning, but I felt so guilty about it in the beginning because I'm like, I'm not at my desk. But then I
Right.
realized what I was getting out of it. And like, there's no expectation for people to be at their desk. That's not how we run our business.
No.
That's not even our values. So it's like, what is wrong with me? Why do I feel like this? But there's a sense of
Years of training.
years of training, right? And it's just like, how can you unattach? Again, it's not about the action, it's about the outcome and it's about what you're able to enable as a result of it. And I was like, I need this space. Like and I think because it's been a busy time for me, evenings and stuff have been very busy too. And so it's like I'm feeling very full, I would say, by the end of the day. Like my brain is very full. I've been doing a lot of switching activities. I'm in a lot of meetings or calls. I'm, and then I have some tactical things where I'm having to judge my materials, or I'm researching, or I'm doing reach outs, or this or that. And so, how do I create some of this space for myself? And I'm best in the early morning. Now, not everyone else has that, but for me, morning time is my best, just kind of like, or like super, super late at night. But if I
Yeah.
do that, then I get too tired. You know what I mean? That's not
Yeah.
always on practice. And so it's like, how do I create some of that in my day? So because I'm coming up with things easier. And I think that's the biggest thing is it's like you feel like when you're running so busy that like that's like always the solution. And it's not always the solution because sometimes you're doing 10,000 things being busy to take longer to get the same result as far as just like taking a breath and pausing and like giving your mind some space to bounce some of this stuff around. And then it's just clearer. And you're like, oh, here's the
Hmm.
answer. I have it. I know what we need to do.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. And I heard what made it okay for me was I heard, who was it? I think it was our Mr. Amazon man, Jeff. I think it was him. He was talking about that and how he doesn't have any meetings before 10 a.m. and he takes this slow. I'm like, I need that too. And I'm like, why do I feel validated? Because you said it, but now I feel better about it and I'm okay with it now.
Well, he does have a track record, so
Right?
I guess.
Like, work for you. I trust that. How
Yeah.
about you? How about you?
Yeah, I think that when I think on this topic, I think, yeah, probably at our stage of our company, it's not like it opens up time for you to go do something like in just as a hobby. But
Yeah.
I think what it does allow is to really think through more of the things that maybe got set to the side before, where it's much easier to do task-based things and like, get through to what I always say is like widget type work
Hmm.
and then forego the creative space, the time to just sit down and with a blank piece of paper and kind of think through a problem. And I do find that there is more time in the day to do those kind of things, even in such a small company with lots of diversity of tasks required. It
Hmm.
allows you to focus on the outcomes more, and and stop and like you said, like kind of go back in and reiterate on assets or things to customize. Like we can definitely be customizing things right now, which I think definitely builds the brand that we're proud of by able to do that.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think there's lots of cool things that, and
I
I think
think an
people should
important
just
thing we
be.
should mention.
Sorry, say that
You
again.
go ahead. No, you go
Oh
ahead
no,
and I'll also go after you.
I don't remember.
I don't know. Okay, sorry. I was like totally overlapping you. Apologies. She had a brilliant thought, everyone. You're gonna have to stay till next time to
Stay
see what it
tuned
was.
till I come up with it again.
Yeah. But I think one thing we should mention that I think both you and I actually use that time for too is to really focus on team and developing our team and
Right.
uh and supporting them and like resource capacity, how things are working, if we need to tweak things from like that kind of perspective. So I think that's like a really important thing as we invest a bunch of that time back into people. And so
Yeah.
people on our team. And so I think that's one thing we shouldn't forget to mention to our listeners. I
It's
was
a
going to
really
say,
good point,
you're not reading us.
actually,
Yeah.
because like one of the things we're trying to solve for companies ourselves at League is this problem of developing people, keeping employees engaged, keeping employees progressing. And I don't mean always promotion. I just mean feeling like they're growing personally. Like that's one of the biggest problems we're trying to solve for both employees and employers. And so if that's not, to all the leaders out there, if that's the one thing you get to do more
That
of
you
is
would.
develop your people, when you have AI time freed up,
Mm-hmm.
that's exactly where you should point to. Because if we could get back to a model where leaders actually got to spend way more time with their people,
Mm-hmm.
I think companies would see the turnover go down exponentially. They'd see that loyalty. And again, I'm not into this because I've never run my career this way either, like where you have to stay in one company for 45 years. Like, I don't think that that's actually the right thing either. But, the jumping companies every 18 months is very expensive for companies and not good for employees. Like, you barely get to know your job by 18 months. And so I think if we could come to a nice cadence on that turnover rate, the increase in big economic type measurements like
Mhm.
GDP and stuff like that, and ROIs with companies, I think we'd be back to a really good place.
Yep. Agree.
Yeah. So, that league app, LEEG, just go and sign up. That'll get you started.
Yep. And if you're an enterprise, reach out because we've got a lot of incredible enterprise solutions to do that for
We
teams.
do. Okay, so that was a great episode. Thanks, Bree, for all your insight, particularly on female fundraising. You are definitely an expert in this topic today. Thank you to all listeners. Don't forget to tell your friends about System Override. We'd love to have some more listeners. Have a great night.
See ya.
Bye.